Hello, my beauties and beasties out there. I'm your host, DF, and welcome to Beauties and Beasts, a podcast of all things Beauty and the Beast. And you have exactly 13 hours to show your praise and become a patron to my podcast, or I'll turn you into a goblin. Okay. I'm kidding. Just getting in the spirit of today's topic. Last time we discussed the Phantom of the Opera and how sometimes the beauty doesn't always return the beast's affections in certain stories. We all have heard of Jim Henson, creator of the Muppets and Sesame Street. Well, outside of children's television, he also provided Muppets for several Hollywood films, including those he directed himself. Particularly his 1986 cult film, Labyrinth, starring the late David Bowie and a young Jennifer Connelly, a movie that is so 80s, it shows. There are some fans out there that may not be happy with my review. Not that I hate this movie, I'm just a bit critical of it. And a spoiler alert is in order if you have not seen this movie. All right, before we get into this, I'd like to thank my $5 plus patrons, Arvin Joshua Rocks 15, BellaPinkSavage, Cosmic Trail, nalaxsimba, Poppy X Branch 2000, and TyrannosaurusVenom. You too can become a patron today. Just go to patron.podbean.com/beautiesandbeasts. That's patron.podbean.com/beautiesandbeasts. Or buy my merchandise on Redbubble. Hurry up if you want to receive your holiday gifts on time. Just go to disneyfanatic23.redbubble.com. That's disneyfanatic23.redbubble.com. And remember that 10% of my November and December proceeds will be donated to the Make-A-Wish Foundation. So thanks to those who've ordered merchandise already. If I stop getting calls, I'll have a charity stream going on sometime this month for those of you who just want to do small individual donations, and also hear some voice requests from me in return for donations. Okay, so Labyrinth starts off with a 16-year-old Jennifer Connelly playing a 16-year-old Sarah before her acting skills were polished. Look, no hate on Jennifer Connelly, but you have to admit, her acting wasn't at its peak during this film. Come to think of it, the best actors in this movie are the Muppets. Then again, this was the 80s. Campy acting was a standard. Okay, enough of my criticizing the 80s. Anyway, Sarah is rehearsing lines from her favorite book, The Labyrinth, out in the park dressed in this wedding-type gown because she wants to be an actress like her mom, who, according to supplemental material not mentioned in the movie, left their family for an actor who looks eerily like David Bowie, who we see photos of in Sarah's room. Wow, thanks. This puts the movie in better context. Sarah rushes home just as it starts to rain, and she yells at her stepmother that it's not fair that her and her dad go out every week and force her to babysit her baby stepbrother, Toby. And the stepmother's like, well, it's not like you have anything to do. Like, you don't have a boyfriend. Like maybe if you went out and made some friends. Yeah, which is a horrid thing to say, but yeah, it's not like Sarah's doing anything. Is asking to watch her stepbrother for a few hours a week really too much? Sarah runs to a room filled with stuffed animals and fantasy books like Wizard of Oz and Alice in Wonderland, foreshadowing. And as soon as the parents leave for date night, she finds her teddy bear Lancelot missing. She storms to baby Toby's room, finds the bear there, and yells at him for stealing and makes him cry. God, this girl's a brat. Seriously, now that I'm a nanny who looks after babies, this behavior towards an infant who doesn't really know any better just makes me cringe. Fed up with his crying, Sarah tells Toby a story of a girl forced to work as a slave to watch a spoiled baby brat, your brother, who you can watch for a few hours. God, I'm sorry. Very, very little is making me like her at the beginning. And Sarah tells of how the king of the goblins fell in love with the girl and gave her special powers. All she had to do was say the words, and the Goblin King would take the baby to his castle beyond the Goblin City and turn him into a goblin. Little does she know, there are actual goblins listening, and as soon as she says, "I wish the goblins would take you away right now," and guess what happens? Baby disappears, goblins appear, an owl comes through the window and transforms into David Bowie, aka Jareth the Goblin King. Sarah asks where her brother is, and Jareth is like, in my castle, like you told me. I didn't mean it, she says. And Jareth tells her to go back to her room, play with her toys and costumes, and forget all about the baby. Even offers her a crystal ball, which shows her her dreams. But it's not for a girl who looks after crying babies. But Sarah says that she can't forget about her brother and wants him back. She should make up your mind, girl. I don't really get your character right now. After Jareth throws a snake at her, lovely, he finally offers her a deal. If she can solve his labyrinth and reach his castle at the center within 13 hours, she can have her brother back, or else he'll become a goblin forever. For those of you who don't know what a labyrinth is, it's kind of like a maze, except got a lot more twists and turns, and sometimes walls move on their own. Tricks like that, and a lot more puzzles. So Sarah is off to rescue her baby brother, who she can't stand, but can't find the entrance to the labyrinth. Nearby is a hobgoblin named Hoggle, who is spraying fairies, who apparently like mosquitoes in this world. They bite everybody. And she asks him for his help, but he's very cryptic about his help. And when she's not satisfied, he says, you know what your problem is? You take too many things for granted. So eventually he shows her the way in, but then she has trouble finding another opening. This girl can't really do much, can she? A worm tells her there are lots of openings. She just can't see them. And that she shouldn't take things for granted. Gee, that line is coming up a lot. Well, she finds an opening, thanks to perspective, and is about to go left until the worm tells her to go right, and mumbles, oh, thank goodness, if she'd gone left, she would have gone straight to the castle. Gee, thanks for that. Meanwhile, at the castle, Jareth and his goblins break into a magic dance number. For some reason. Okay, I don't really get the point of this, except to give David Bowie a chance to rock out, I suppose. It's kind of catchy. Sarah goes through several obstacles and, like most teenagers, fails to make the right decision over and over, ultimately ending up in an oubliette where she reunites with Hoggle, who is secretly working for Jareth, who wants her to give up and start all over again. You know, I don't really understand this guy's motivations. Is it normal to put the girl you like through psychological torment? I don't think so. Hoggle tries to take Sarah back to the beginning of the labyrinth, but Sarah refuses to give up. She offers Hoggle her bracelet as payment to show her the way to the castle. Jareth appears like a creeper and calls Hoggle out for helping Sarah, but Hoggle insists, I was only tricking her like you told me to. And Jareth's like, if it turns out you betrayed me, I will banish you to the bog of eternal stench. Okay, this creepy laugh is getting a little old. Sorry. Jareth asks Sarah how she's enjoying his labyrinth, and she's like, it's a piece of cake. Yeah, never say that in movies like this. Then Jareth's like, then why not we up the stakes? And he proceeds to cut her time limit in half. And she's like, it's not fair. Jareth says, you say that so often. I wonder what your basis for comparison is. Yeah, good point. After being chased by cleaners, Sarah and Hoggle find the ladder out of the oubliette, although she's not sure she can trust Hoggle now. And he says, well, he had to say he was tricking her and that Jareth scares him. And, he's a coward. So what else is there for him to do? They end up to a place Sarah has been before. Angry, Sarah swipes her bracelet back, and Hoggle is like, it's not fair! No, it isn't. But that's the way it is. Congratulations, Sarah! You just won $200! Not really, but you've won some perspective. They run into a wise man with a bird for a hat, and he asks who they are, and Sarah introduces Hoggle as her friend, and he is thrown off by that. And she asks for a way out of the labyrinth. And the wise man says, yeah, he'll tell her for a price. Hoggle insists that he won't part with his jewels, so Sarah gives her ring. The wise man says, the way forward is sometimes the way back. And Hoggle's like, well, that's not helpful. You didn't have to pay him for that. And he asks Sarah why she called him her friend. And she's like, well, I guess you're my friend. Because, he's never been called a friend before. But when they hear a roar, he's like, every hobgoblin for himself, and hightails it out of there. Sarah, on her own again, follows the roar to find a group of goblin soldiers torturing a giant beast. She wards them off with rocks and helps the beast, whose name is Ludo. Ludo says, friend, and Sarah agrees. He doesn't know the way out of the labyrinth, but he still tags along because he's adorable. Plus, extra muscle. After going through a door puzzle, Sarah and Ludo are separated in a forest. Meanwhile, Hoggle hears her cries and rushes to help her. And then Jareth appears. Hoggle insists he's only leading Sarah back to the beginning, just like they planned, but Jareth has a better idea. He gives Hoggle a peach to give to Sarah. He doesn't want to hurt her, but Jareth is like, you're really losing your mind over a girl. And Hoggle's like, I'm losing it over a girl. Yeah, got a point there. I mean, what's your excuse, Jareth? And Jareth says, if she kisses you, I'll turn you into a prince. Prince of the land of stench. If I didn't know any better, I'd think he was jealous that Hoggle was getting more attention from Sarah. Back in the forest, Sarah steps into a freaky green screen scene with fire gang creatures able to remove their body parts for fun because, I don't know. It's a Big Lake Gator moment, or just the Muppeteers showing off. Either way, the effects in the scene did not age well. Sorry, 80s. And this particular movie did not quite refine their green screen techniques. Before the fire gang can take Sarah's head off, Hoggle rescues her, and for some reason, she kisses him, despite his protests. Consent, lady. And they land in the Bog of Stench and reunite with Ludo, who ended up there somehow. Plot contrivance, I guess. The gang try to get out of the bog, but they are stopped by a squirrel fox thing named Sir Didymus, who's quite a feisty little guy. Ludo fights him, and Didymus declares that he has not met his match before, and that the two of them will be brothers in arms since they've matched in battle. Okay. But Sir Didymus still won't let them cross the bridge, as none may pass without his permission. So Sarah asks for his permission. That was probably the easiest puzzle yet. Piece of cake, right? Wrong! Because the bridge collapses. Yeah. I guess if nobody walks across it for a while, then it just collapses? Whatever. Ludo calls upon rocks using a super roar, which he apparently has, to form a path across the bog. Sir Didymus tags along with his dog steed, Ambrosius. And now that they're out of the bog, Hoggle tries to get rid of the peach, but Jareth won't let him. So, with no choice, he gives Sarah the peach and runs away in guilt. Sarah then takes an acid trip, hallucinating herself at a masked ball and dances with the Goblin King. When she shatters the dream, she wakes up in a junkyard with no memory of why she's here and how she got here in the first place, or even where she is. Meanwhile, Hoggle is sulking off to the side somewhere on how he's lost his only friend. A junk lady comes by and gives Sarah her teddy bear, Lancelot, and takes her back to her bedroom with all her toys, everything in the world she ever cared for. But Sarah sees her Labyrinth book and reads the line about taking back the stolen child. She then remembers Toby, looks at her toys and said, "It's all junk!" She then breaks out of the fake room and meets up with Ludo and Sir Didymus. And guess what? The Goblin City is right up ahead! That's convenient. At the gates, they are attacked by a giant mechanical guard, but they are saved in time by Hoggle. He apologizes for his betrayal, but Sarah forgives him as he's finally proved himself courageous. I mean, he did just face down a giant automaton. You know, I was going to cover this movie solely for the one-sided Beauty and the Beast relationship, but the real relationship, I think, is between Sarah and her friends here. The gang storm the castle. Goblins attack, Ludo calls on a rock army, and the goblins are defeated. Sarah insists on facing the king alone because that's how it's done. Right. Yeah. The friends say, but should you need us, I'll call. Sarah finds herself in an MC Escher staircase showdown with the Goblin King, chasing Toby around the staircase maze until she ultimately takes a leap of faith, only to come face to face with Jareth. Well, honestly, that's the best way I can describe this scene because it's kind of trippy. And Jareth says, I've been generous up until now, and I can be cruel. What have you done that's generous? You asked the baby be taken. I took him. I've reordered time, turned the world upside down, and done it all for you. I'm exhausted from living up to your expectations of me. Remember these lines. I'm going to put them into better context later. Sarah ignores this monologue and proceeds to say her own monologue from her book, The Labyrinth. For my will is as strong as yours, and my kingdom as great. Jareth, in desperation, shows her the crystal ball again, offering her dreams. All she has to do is let him rule her. Fear me, love me, do as I say, and I will be your slave. But then Sarah remembers the last line of the monologue. You have no power over me. And then there's a big dream shatter and a bunch of trippiness, and Sarah finds herself at home. Just like that. Her brother is asleep in his crib. She gives him her bear Lancelot and goes to clean her room just as her parents come home. Seems like Sarah's finally ready to put her fantasies to rest when her friends appear in the mirror saying, should you need us? And she says, yes, I do need you. Every now and again in my life, for no reason at all, I need you, all of you. And then all her friends appear and they party till dawn. So, wait, was this magical world real? Or is this an Alice in Wonderland thing where it was all in her head? Well, my theory is it was all in her head, and that the Labyrinth world and the characters in it were a representation of her confusing adolescent psyche maturing into adulthood. I know, sounds like I've taken one too many psych courses, but hear me out. Sarah starts off as a moody teenager, like most, who takes everything for granted and thinks everything is unfair. Throughout her journey, with every puzzle in the labyrinth, she learns that things aren't always as they seem or gonna go her way, and that her actions have consequences. For example, she wished her brother was taken away, so he was taken. She got advice in return for her jewelry. With every wrong turn she made, there was a consequence. Also shows that as you grow up, you will make many mistakes, and instead of fretting over them, you learn from them. Sarah also learned in the junkyard that material possessions mean nothing in the end, that there are more important things like friends and family, and in regards to her mother, I think Sarah's dramatics are a way of being closer to her. She has to let the past go. Everything connected to her childhood and mother if she is to move on. Sarah's final test is when she goes to retrieve her brother on the staircase, and she takes responsibility for him and herself in standing up to the Goblin King. So in the end, Sarah gains perspective and decides to put her selfishness aside to take care of her brother and also pack up some of her old stuff. But not entirely. See, we all grow up and we take on new responsibilities, and as a result, we give up on some childhood pastimes, but not entirely. The fact that Sarah's friends can still visit her, I think, is Jim Henson's way of showing that though we may leave our childhood behind, a part of our childhood will never leave us. After all, A love for fantasy can lead us to becoming writers or animators or actors or podcast hosts, particularly on analyzing fairy tale tropes. Maybe I don't play with my dolls as much anymore, but I haven't lost my imagination or creativity. So, what role does David Bowie play in this coming of age journey? Well, most fans of this movie seem to think that Sarah should have stayed with Jareth in the end, and all I can really think of is why? I mean, they have like zero chemistry. The only remotely romantic moment is the ballroom scene, and that's when Jareth is deliberately screwing with her mind. Not to mention, the guy steals her brother, torments her, manipulates her, and still demands she let him rule her. Why would anyone want to be with a guy like that? Well, I can think of one reason. Because he's played by David Bowie. That's no excuse, ladies. A psycho's a psycho, says the girl with a crush on Alistair the radio demon. Hey, he's an ace baby and I love him. Don't judge me. Now, back to why Jareth is important to Sarah's journey through the psyche. Let's think about it. What is a fantasy nearly every teenager is guilty of entertaining at least one point in their life? The imaginary boyfriend / girlfriend / romantic partner, depending on your preferences. Even I'm guilty of having an imaginary boyfriend at one point. Until I broke things off with him because, it wasn't fair to be entertaining him in my fantasies when I could see other people in real life. It's not a harmful phase when young people are dealing with hormones and a sudden yearning for companionship. To fulfill that desire, they dream up their ideal person that they'd date and or marry. In their mind, of course. So Jareth is, simply put, Sarah's dream boy, who is surprisingly antagonistic. Because when we grow up and start meeting real people, we grow out of the imaginary partner scenario, throwing away unrealistic expectations for realistic ones. Remember when he said that he was exhausted from living up to her expectations of him? When really she didn't ask him to do anything? Which is why Jareth tries to keep Sarah rooted in her fantasies so she won't give him up. And Toby is a symbol of Sarah's responsibility that will trump her fantasies, which might be another ulterior motive for him taking the baby. See, Sarah could keep her friends like Hoggle and Ludo and Didymus, who taught her lessons and represented more innocent parts of her childhood. But for her to grow up into an independent young woman, her imaginary boyfriend would have to go. Also, she's 16, so going out with a, 30-year-old David Bowie would be creepy? Well, I suppose it is her fantasy, so I can't fault her for that. So yeah, overall, this movie is about growing up, letting go of childhood, but you should still carry what you learned and valued from your childhood with you. Don't take things for granted, not everything's fair, and don't throw your life away for David Bowie. If that makes any sense. So, next time during the week of Christmas, for our Christmas special, we will be doing Tim Burton's Edward Scissorhands, which is honestly one of the saddest Beauty and the Beast type films I've ever seen, after Corpse Bride. Okay, and Poppy X Branch 2000 says, movies like these are so confusing. I still carry my imagination at 21. Well, that is very good. Anyway, if you haven't seen Edward Scissorhands, I recommend you do. If you have Disney Plus, it was just added, so go ahead, watch it. All right, does anybody have anything to add in the chat? that'll be all. Until next time, become a patron, buy Redbubble merch, support the Make-A-Wish Foundation this holiday season, and make sick kids happy. Remember, 80s rock stars aren't all they're cracked up to be. I'm just kidding. 80s music is the bomb. Dance, magic, dance. Dance, magic, dance. Oh, please don't strike me for copyright.